Good morning again, everyone. We'll get started and get right into it. I'm Matt Kozloski. I'm the VP of Services and Security over at the Winslow Technology Group. We help our customers with everything from the desktop to the data center to cloud, and certainly security is a huge part of what we do. Our security practice is largely based on the NIST 2.0 now cybersecurity framework. We have a variety of services and solutions that help customers out from all aspects of the framework and such. One of the key areas that we often bump into is folks that are interested in monitoring and managing their cloud estate. And specifically today, we're going to talk about Microsoft's cloud services, so Azure, M365, Entra, and really monitoring that and managing it from a security perspective. Um, I have Mike Heiser from Secureworks joined. Good morning, Mike.
Hey,
Uh,
good morning,
you
Matt.
know,
How's it going?
good. Thank you. Really looking forward to this. Mike, do you want to just give a little intro about maybe about yourself and Secureworks?
Sure, absolutely. Mike Heiser. I am a principal security engineer at Secureworks. I've been with Secureworks about 20 years. I started in the SOC as a security analyst. So I did that for about 7 to 8 years, analyzing events, network traffic logs. Then I worked on our provisioning team for a while, so helping
Okay.
Secureworks clients get on board, and then firewall team for a couple years as well. So working on all the different firewalls that we supported at the time, and now
Okay.
I work on the pre-sales team.
Okay. Awesome. Pretty like well-rounded, I would say.
Yeah,
Very
it's
good.
been a fun ride. Yep.
Yeah. In that time, I imagine Microsoft and Microsoft related products and services have been a huge part of what you've had to support from an admin, perhaps respond to from a security perspective, and now architect essentially solutions around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Microsoft footprint has grown tremendously, and obviously a huge shift from on-premise environments up to the cloud over the past couple years, and that really changes the whole way that we have to protect the environment. It's now no longer in clients, own data centers, but up in Microsoft's platform and cloud. So
Mm.
changes the way that we have to approach security a little bit for sure.
Yeah, it does. We see a huge adoption, as you're saying, of especially Microsoft Cloud services. And this isn't just hosted Exchange, like a lot of Intune, Entra ID, leveraging Azure AD, Entra ID as an anchor, if you will, for all SAML SSO, and securing it with conditional access. And it's been really interesting to see the adoption of Microsoft from when it was literally Microsoft 365 apps, like a way to consume apps. And then, hosted Exchange came online many years ago. And fast forward to today, where you essentially, as an end user, could migrate your entire Active Directory estate to a hosted solution in Microsoft 365. You can migrate, your data center in terms of IaaS if you want to run virtual machines in Azure, network security, VPN, use it for disaster recovery, and then other services like hosted storage and SQL. So Mike, I'd say one of the more common, key areas, if you will, that folks tend to get nervous about is, when things were on-prem, they could monitor, the server's logs, they could send, Active Directory and Windows logs, with a log collector to, a SOC, like Secureworks for analytics. Once it's moved to the cloud, though, that really has changed, capabilities. So I guess like what do you think are some key areas in terms of how customers should monitor or address really this large scale adoption and migration to, either a full or hybrid Microsoft services, cloud oriented um, architecture?
Well, in some ways, moving to an IaaS or platform as a service infrastructure is better for security in the sense that clients in the past days of on-premise Exchange, on-premise Active Directory, and whatnot, like you're irresponsible for protecting the underlying infrastructure, the server, the
Mm,
operating system. And now Microsoft is primarily responsible, good or bad, right? Microsoft's now
sure.
responsible for that, and so it definitely helps your security posture in that sense. But at the same time, there's still a lot of risk there. I'd
Mm,
say the majority of our clients have migrated to Office 365 and Entra ID at this point. We still have a couple stragglers that do still have on-prem AD and Exchange servers, but the majority of clients are in Microsoft's online cloud. So from a security standpoint, it improves that, but you still, as a client, you still obviously are responsible for your configurations, your policies,
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
conditional access policies, your roles and permissions, right? And so it's still on the client to make sure that all that is configured properly.
Right. Right.
And it can be easier or more difficult depending on your expertise with Microsoft's cloud platform. So, for example, when Microsoft first started moving everybody up to the cloud, simple features like auditing logs in Office 365 and Azure AD at the time were disabled by default, right?
Hmm.
So you had to go
Hmm.
in and you had to know, okay, I have to go in and enable audit logging, right? So that if I
Yeah.
do have a security incident, I can go back and get those logs.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's things like that now. Thankfully, it's on by default, right? So everything, all the audit logging that Microsoft provides is enabled by default.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
interesting you mentioned that specifically. So one of the presentations that we do almost as a roadshow is this moments to disaster where we talk through an incident and then afterwards we provide, a bunch of like practical tips. And actually one of those tips is exactly that, like making sure audit logging is turned on because
yeah,
it hadn't been in the past by default. You're absolutely right about that. But then also um querying it. And I think this is where Secureworks can really help out also. Because like Microsoft natively doesn't provide a lot of great reporting out of the box. I mean, there certainly there's some monitoring and in the risky user behavior bit if you're subscribed to Azure or Entra ID P2 would be it now. But I do find that for folks that need a deeper level of understanding of like maybe unmanaged devices connecting to their environment when passwords were last reset, folks are either writing scripts like PowerShell scripts to pull that information and report on it, or they're using the KQL query language and querying kind of the back end directly, and it feels very programmatic. And I could imagine a lot of administrators just aren't interested in really doing that. So I guess like how would you say from those audit and security logs, how do you essentially like collect that, provide analytics and really take that raw data and you know essentially make it meaningful to customers?
yeah. I mean, so we pull all the data that Microsoft makes available, right? So we use various different APIs. We actually have a slide we can pull up and kind of it talks
Oh,
to all the
yes.
different data that we pull from Microsoft, right?
Hmm.
So the Graph API, the Event Hubs, the Azure Monitor API, the Entra ID API. So we pull all that telemetry in, and one of the one of the kind of the
Bringing that
unique
up.
things about the way that we approach it is a lot of platforms simply pull in the alerts, right? And they're pulling in the alert data from Microsoft so that if Microsoft triggers an alert or Defender triggers an alert, they've
Mhm.
got the alert to respond to. We pull in all the raw telemetry from
Okay.
Microsoft across the board, audit logs, Azure logs, activity log, etc.
Okay.
And we store that for 12 months. So we've got all the forensic data that we need, and then we apply that to our threat detectors. So when
Okay.
Microsoft generates alerts, certainly our SOC gets those alerts and can respond to those. But we have a lot of our own threat detectors that we've built from the ground up with the new platform, the Taegis XDR platform, so that we're applying all
Gotcha.
that raw telemetry across the threat detectors, like our hands-on keyboard detector, which is looking at commands that are running on the endpoint. We have a business email compromise detector. We've seen a huge increase, obviously, in business email compromise.
Hmm.
A lot of identity-based threats, stolen credentials, phishing attempts that are being successful. So a lot of our detectors are looking at various different things, but identity threats are huge right now.
Okay. Okay.
So that's where we can apply those threat detectors and quickly detect and respond to those as well.
Okay. So, Microsoft, in the logging, even, with API integration, actually generates a ton of information. So, how do you like present this in a meaningful way to folks? Like, is it in the form of reporting, dashboards, alerts, like actual incident investigation? Like, how far do you all take it, and how do you essentially like take the raw data and make it meaningful to security practitioners?
Yeah, I mean, so that's a great point too. So within Microsoft, obviously, there's a lot of different data, and you can get to that
Mhm.
data, like you said, in so many different ways. There's multiple different dashboards that you could go to look up a piece of the data here, maybe the user account information over here. Maybe I need to go to my logs that I've got over here in a storage account or an event hub. So if you're trying to do the investigation on the Microsoft side, there's a lot of different ways you can get to the data. We pull everything together into the platform from all
Hmm.
those different data sources, but including
Hmm.
on-premise devices too, like your
Okay.
firewalls, your routers, your switches, your server logs, like everything you've got, we're going to pull that into the platform together. And then we present that in all the ways that you mentioned, right?
Hmm.
Reports, alerts, investigations. But the key thing is going to be the investigations that we do. So when we see something that triggers a detector on our side, our analysts then build out that investigation
Okay.
using all that telemetry. So we can kind of
Gotcha.
quickly search across the board for any activity related to that user account, the IP address, the file, etc., and pull that all into the investigation that the client can see, and then
Okay.
either we react or they react based on the severity and what we're seeing in the environment.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess like when it comes to, cloud or resources, like um when user activities, like what are some specific ways you get even more insight, I'll say, into that?
So, well, insight into the, well, I should say a lot of the threats that we do see are identity based.
Okay.
So we enrich the investigation in a couple ways, but one of the ways is through user account data, right? So we have playbooks that'll reach out to Microsoft. So not only do we pull in all the telemetry, but within the investigations, we leverage playbooks. So one of those playbooks, for example, is user enrichment. So when we see an alert occur based on maybe a user clicked on a phishing link that was successful,
Hmm.
we can run a playbook that automatically pulls in all the user details from Entra ID. So, where is this user based out of? Are they based out of Germany or the
Hmm.
Netherlands? What are their normal work hours? What groups are they in within Entra ID? What applications do they have or should have access to? So that as an analyst, when I'm looking at that, I can immediately see, okay, this is the details about this user account. Maybe they're a VP of finance or HR. They're based out of the Netherlands, but I just saw a login from the United States. I've got all that context right there.
Hmm.
But then also, because we're pulling all the raw telemetry in, not just the alerts, I can also see, okay, this user just accessed, a password called, or a file called passwords.xls in OneDrive or SharePoint, or they were modifying these files in OneDrive.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it really goes from taking that alert to looking at the entire picture of what just happened in the environment. And then as an analyst, I can quickly, within seconds, say, okay, this looks suspicious. I need to disable this user account or take the host offline.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, what actions do you commonly see, and I guess, do you have any kind of like automation wrapped around that? Like if let's say an unusual, user login happens, like in, I don't know, like Germany or something like that. No knock on Germany, love Germans, go Germany, all good there. But like threat actors in Germany, and it's unusual for a user to log in. You all detect that. Do you have like any SOAR or automation capabilities of like disabling user accounts or um anything along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the proactive response actions that specifically work with Azure are going to be like disabling a user account, forcing a password reset,
Okay.
revoking user sessions, right? So in addition to the
Hmm.
password reset, we want to revoke all the current sessions.
Right.
If they've got Defender deployed or any of our supported EDR agents, we can take the host offline. So if they're running, Defender for Endpoint, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Carbon Black, we can immediately isolate the host and take it offline.
Mhm.
Um, we don't require clients to have our own agent installed. We do offer an agent with the platform, but if they have one of those four supported EDR technologies, we can just use that to take those
Okay.
host response actions for them. And then we have various different playbooks where we can block IPs at firewalls or open a ticket in their ticketing system for them. So it just depends on kind of the client's environments, what technology they have in their
Okay.
stack, and then how they want us to integrate with that. But being able to quickly take action is, I'd say, critical, especially as the dwell time reduces. Like dwell
Right.
time has
Right.
gone from, it used to take 30 days on average for ransomware to get deployed in the environment. Threat groups are now down to hours, if not minutes, right? So
Right.
dwell time
Right.
is reducing, and it's even more important that actions be taken immediately. And a lot of those actions can be automated as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or even triggering, like say if they are using Entra IP2, we can
Hmm.
trigger a user as a risky user. And
Hmm.
that might trigger conditional access policies on their side where maybe the login looks suspicious, but we don't,
Yep.
not enough to disable their account or reset a password, but maybe we
Yep.
want to trigger them as a risky user so that they have to re-authenticate, so
Right.
that could be
Right.
taken as an action as well.
Yep. I'll tell you, just this is sort of a off to the side, bit of a morning, half caffeinated tangent, but um, the whole concept you mentioned like password reset, and I just want to kind of share this with folks a little bit. Um, Token theft is a real thing. So we see users tricked into in WTG's kind of supplemental incident response ish practice where we come in and help folks out post incident. We actually have seen an uptick in cases that are token theft where a threat actor is essentially doing a person in the middle attack, tricking a user to authenticate, including the MFA prompt, and then grabbing that security token to then further authenticate. So we actually see that happening more and more now, and it's a way for threat actors to essentially defeat MFA. Now, I say that to say like you were just talking about password reset, and then you mentioned revoking sessions. Like I can't underscore how important that whole concept is. So if you have a situation where an environment's compromised, due to token theft, like you have one user, they, had like a business email compromise that led to that. Really, at that point, as an admin, you're considering doing a system-wide password reset and revocation of sessions just to be clear that this threat actor didn't target more folks, and there are no kind of stale tokens that are out there that you're unaware of. So I say that to say like password resets and the revocation of sessions is really um, not it's not that it's not difficult to do. You have to like really think about it, like how am I gonna either script this or perform this action in bulk in the interface. And I would encourage folks to think about if you had to do a bulk password reset across the board, how would you do that? And it could be a pretty interesting and simple tabletop exercise, and figure out if you're going to do it from like the M365 console, if you're going to do it in PowerShell scripts, what user accounts you would include, not include, because remember you have like guest users now in Enter ID. You have your primary licensed users. You probably have some like service type users built in there. So anyway, bit of a tangent, but I as practical advice, I would encourage folks to consider, if and when you have to do a bulk password reset, make sure it's a password reset, but you're also revoking sessions as part of that, but
Mhm.
also planning for it and making sure you have a methodology and kind of structure around that. So anyway, I know it's not exactly related to what we're talking about, Mike, but you mentioned that and it just triggered that, and that is just some practical advice based on what we're seeing more and more
Yeah, that's
in
a
incidents of
great
recent.
point. I mean,
Yeah.
when an incident occurs, being able to know, okay, this is how we need to respond. Like we have a playbook that we use specifically for around phishing attempts, like called a
Mhm.
blast radius playbook that really looks at like what else did that user account touch, right? So somebody just
Mhm.
logged in, they clicked the link, they gave away their credentials. We can immediately run a playbook that shows, okay, this is everything that that user account did. Do I need to isolate this endpoint? Did the
Mhm.
email phishing attempts also go to these three other users, and I need to reset their
Okay.
passwords immediately as well? So it kind of reduces the time to response around
Okay.
the phishing based threat specifically.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow, that's cool. All right. And
yeah.
is that unique to M365, or does that work like at the endpoint level for user compromise, or how's that generally work?
That's for the current playbook that I mentioned, the blast radius
Mhm.
playbook is for email-based threats. So that could
Okay.
be
Okay.
for Microsoft if you most of our clients are using Office 365, right? Or it could also work for Mimecast and Proofpoint. Anything where we're getting email telemetry or
Okay.
like alerts from an email provider, like Mimecast,
Cool.
Proofpoint, Microsoft right now are the three
Okay.
providers
Okay.
that we would integrate with there, and abnormal security as well for
Okay.
email. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Actually, that's a super interesting integration. I know that's not exactly related to Microsoft, except maybe in the context of like email and hosted exchange. But I mean, that is probably the biggest primary service that people leverage here. So that's cool still. But
yeah.
um, I, that's really interesting because that is something that is difficult again in the IR work that we do, or the supplemental response work. We're not like a real IR firm, although we do provide IR like services. Um, backtracking and really understanding what a user did or didn't do when it comes to business email compromise is really critical and actually pretty challenging to determine. So this like blast radius feature is like pretty interesting actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have like I'd say probably 20 or so different detectors that look for that. A lot of them use AI, machine learning.
Hmm.
Um, like so our platform was completely rebuilt. Like if you've seen the Secureworks, what we call the counter threat platform, you know, 5 to 10 years ago, it's completely different than what we have right now. So it was completely rewritten from the ground up. We hired a team of developers. We brought in AI experts, right? So like Nash Borges, for example. We hired him from the government from like NSA a couple years ago. We said like we've got tons of telemetry, tons of data, like 38 petabytes of data across 3 data lakes.
Hmm.
We've got like massive amounts of data. We need to build better detectors that are AI machine learning based, right? So our analysts are fantastic, right? They can look at an event. We need human eyes on more critical incidents, but we want to
Hmm.
make sure they're focused on ones that are truly critical that need human analysis. So
Hmm.
using AI and machine learning, we've built out, I'd say like 20 to 30 different detectors is what we're at right now that look for specific types of attacks in the environment. And a business email compromise is a specific detector. So whenever we see logins to Office 365, for example, one of the things it does is it immediately, for any user, it's going to start looking at what did that user do when they logged in.
Okay.
Because
Right.
with
Right.
business email compromise, we immediately see threat actors follow a specific, tactics and techniques when they follow in. They immediately start searching email for invoices, for password files. They'll set up a mail forwarding rule to forward all email out to another address. They will go in and delete any emails that look like it's from the security team, like, hey, your account's compromised, right? They'll delete those kinds of emails or set up a rule for
Right.
that.
Right.
So they follow specific actions, and this detector will automatically look for those kinds of activities on user accounts in your environment and then automatically trigger that detector as a high
Hmm.
severity if we do see that activity. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's kind of, identifying those threats and then, building it out through the detectors to respond to those.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I guess on a broader scale, so we've talked quite a bit about like Microsoft 365 and Entra ID, but certainly there's a lot more to Azure than that. So, do you have just a couple highlights, I guess, on like how in I'll say Azure proper, whether it's IaaS, platform as a service, Secureworks has like APIs or some integrations in terms of detecting and helping folks secure their overall Azure estate.
Yeah, so a couple ways. So, we talked about all the different telemetry that we do pull in, but that includes like NSG like flow logs, right? So we're looking
Mhm.
at basically traffic logs in the environment, analyzing those for threats. We grab data from event hubs. So a lot of clients, if they already have an event hub set up or a storage account set up, we can pull data from there as well
Okay.
into our platform. Um, and that really like it helps reduce the cost for clients as well because
Mhm.
rather than storing it in storage accounts or log analytics, we're pulling that into our platform and storing it for them, and we don't
Okay.
charge based on data volume.
Okay.
So like a lot of times when you're being charged based on data volume, we find clients are obviously they try to reduce what they keep to keep the cost down, but that kind of works in the opposite, right? When it comes to security, we want as much telemetry and as much data, as much logs as possible when we're investigating an
Right.
incident. So that's one of the key reasons why we don't charge based on log volume. So we
Okay.
have clients send that to us, we store it for them. We do still have some clients that'll keep, an event hub or whatever for their data, and that's fine if they want to do that and take that route as well. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean that's one of the ways that we pull in the data. We recently released an identity threat module, identity detection and response. We were seeing so many identity-based threats. A matter of fact, the
Hmm.
majority of our threats that we're seeing are identity-based, stolen credentials, endpoint compromise via stolen credentials, things like that, logins to VPN accounts, remote desktop services that are exposed to the internet, and a lot of those are identity-based in nature. So
Hmm.
um, one of the key things that we wanted to look at with the identity module is like being able to detect the risky user behavior, which we already do in the XDR platform, but we wanted to extend that to include like credential compromised. So if the
Hmm.
users compromise their credentials on the exposed on the dark web or breach forums, we want to be able to pull that data in and then be able to quickly tell the client, hey, you've got an exposure here, whether their clear text password was published or whether their hash was published. So then they can say, okay, this user's data was just breached and they just changed their password X number of days ago, right? So if the breach data happened 6 months ago, but my user changed their password 30 days ago, no big
Hmm.
deal, right? So I can immediately see that and say, okay, this is when the data was breached, and this is when they last changed their password, and then make the decision on do I need to immediately force the password reset or not?
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
it also does cloud posture monitoring as well. So the identity module does, it looks kind of in real time at their entire posture in Azure, and it analyzes everything from gaps in conditional access policies, user accounts, stale user accounts, permissions, applications. So it's going to say, hey, you've got a gap in your conditional access policy here that a user could authenticate without MFA if they log in from this area, from this location. Um, or like you've got, we've seen guest accounts in Entra ID that have admin privileges assigned to them, right? So, things like that, that from a posture standpoint, we want to be more proactive
Hmm.
rather than just being reactive on when we see an attack. We want to be proactive and say, hey, these are gaps that you can do to increase your hygiene and your posture in Azure. Now, ours is kind of like the monitoring, the real-time analysis of that.
Hmm.
We do have clients that'll come to us and say, hey, we just migrated to the cloud, right? So everything from on-prem went up to the cloud. We really want a point in time assessment of our Azure environment. That's where we bring you guys in, right? For you
Hmm.
guys have that the point in time or the
Yeah.
the point in time more comprehensive assessment of Azure,
Right.
everything
Right.
they're using in Azure and looking at it from
Yep.
that standpoint. We're looking at more just from that real time, like because they're throughout the year, they're constantly developers making changes, admins are in there making changes, they're adding new groups, new applications, changing
Hmm.
things around. So from a security standpoint, we want to kind of quickly detect that in our platform
Okay.
when they're doing those kind of risky activities.
Okay. Hey Mike, we're coming up on time here. And there actually is a question in the chat.
Mhm.
I actually forgot to mention, but I figured most people would get get this at this point. If you do have questions, throw them in the chat. There's one pending now, so I'll toss it over to Mike. And then if anyone has any, feel free to post it or certainly follow up with us after. We're happy to talk with that. Talk about Microsoft security. Talk about Microsoft as a whole. We have a pretty substantial and growing significantly practice around Microsoft security and full adoption to it. One brief thing, and then I'll get to the question. Another bit on the incident response services that we provide. We've seen I would say an uptick also in complete compromise of on-prem Active Directory for a variety of reasons, but we've seen a pretty significant uptick in it. So much so that it's been difficult for a variety of reasons just to roll that back as well. So I would caution folks on again like planning for rollback of Active Directory, understanding how that works and some of the implications. So, for example, if you roll back Active Directory from 30 days, you probably have a bunch of domain joined machines that, their machine password essentially is not going to be in sync with the AD that you rolled back to. And you could be, if you have, 1,000 endpoints, what if even half of them needed to be unjoined and rejoined because of the time that you rolled back AD? So, um, a modern approach to that is really considering a solid move forward to hosted solutions. So you're taking advantage of Intune, instead of GPOs for device and policy management, taking advantage of Autopilot and Intune for being able to recover rapidly and re-image or reconfigure machines, storing data in SharePoint and OneDrive. Um, and then certainly wrapping it with security monitoring is pretty critical too. So we're just seeing like less and less on-prem these days, and that includes now really not just moving to Azure, or AD hybrid, using both on-prem AD and cloud, but actually a full move to Entra ID, and then if needed, actually consuming the Azure, or the Active Directory domain services that Microsoft will host and kind of like present to on-prem resources, which works really, really well, by the way. It's not free, but it does work quite well. So anyway, just interesting side bit there. All right, so sorry, the question in the chat, and then first of all, we'll kind of like wrap this up. Mike, could you tell us a little bit about Secureworks research team and how they're tracking threat actors who are targeting Microsoft and Microsoft apps? It's a good question, actually. Really good question.
Yeah, so we track over I'd say 160 different threat groups today, and a lot of those threat groups, if not all of them, are targeting Microsoft and Azure services just because every single client that's out there It's not a matter of, hey, are you using Microsoft services? It's like, which license do you have? E3, E5? Like, so everybody is using Microsoft to some extent. So obviously threat actors take advantage of that wherever they can. But we do a lot of things to track those threat groups. So we infiltrate the threat groups whenever we can. We have over 80 security researchers, and the researchers are kind of organized in different pods. Each of those pods, some of them track nation state threat actors, some of them track, domestic threat actor groups. Um, so they learn everything they can, like where do these threat actors communicate? How do they talk? What does exploit development look like for them? What, like a lot of threat groups are operating as, full-blown, businesses, right?
Mhm.
And they have help desk and support teams. So like
Right.
we want to understand as much about their infrastructure as we can. So we do obviously use all that intelligence to protect our clients. And then we also share that with law enforcement and other agencies through our threat intelligence service as well. But with the threat groups that we are tracking, we automatically take all those indicators of compromise and bring those into the platform as well. Um, but then we also do have a consulting team that's kind of always looking for, they work in tandem with the research team, and they're looking for weaknesses in Azure services. So
Okay.
we've reported, I don't even know how many, probably 5 to 7 new vulnerabilities to Microsoft just in the last 12 months.
Mhm.
So we get CVEs open, we report those to Microsoft, and then get those addressed, right? So when we do that, and a lot of these are published on our website, if you go to the Secureworks research area of the website and you just search for
Mhm.
Entra, you're going to see just in the last couple months, like different vulnerabilities we've reported to Microsoft around
Okay.
vulnerabilities that could be exploited in Azure. So
Okay. Cool.
those are the
Very
different
cool.
ways that we kind of learn about that and then protect our clients from it.
Okay. Well, we're up on time. I really appreciate your time this morning, Mike. Shout out to yourself, Secureworks, and thank you. Really appreciate it. Hope this was valuable for folks. If you have any feedback for us, definitely feel free to leave. I'll leave some comments. We're always trying to improve these and bring valuable information to you all out there. So with that, hope everyone have a really great day, and thanks for joining. Appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye bye. You got it.
Bye.